Hare Krishna, everyone. All glories to Ayendra Prabhu, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura, and all glories to all the previous acharyas, back to Lord Chaitanya, and then back to Lord Brahma and Lord Sri Krishna. All glories to all the assembled devotees. So we had some technical issues tonight on the Gaudiya Grove discussion with Mahdi Hyrule. Something with the computer internet connection, so I just decided to take it live tonight and discuss the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 5, tonight in a direct live video chat, and I figured this would be a good time to do a video lead-in to this Friday's discussion, some background and some insights into Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura's mission and the opponents that he faced when he appeared in this world. We're going to cover a lot of interesting things, so stay tuned. Okay, I will begin reading text 5. I'm just going to dive right into it. So normally I will read the Sanskrit, but in this case, for time constraints, etc., I'm going to just go straight into the English translation. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 1, text 5. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. Purport. Morning is the best time to hold spiritual services. The great sages offered the speaker of the Bhagavatam an elevated seat of respect called the Vyasasana, or the seat of Sri Vyasa. Sri Vyasa is the original spiritual preceptor for all men. And although the preceptors are considered to be his representatives, a representative is one who can exactly present the viewpoint of Sri Vyasadeva. Sri Vyasadeva impregnated the message of Bhagavatam unto Srila Shukadeva Goswami, and Sri Sutta Goswami heard it from him, Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Welcome, Mati. All bona fide representatives of Sri Vyasadeva in the chain of disciplic succession are to be understood to be Goswamis. These Goswamis restrain all their senses, and they stick to the path made by the previous acharyas. The Goswamis do not deliver lectures on the Bhagavatam capriciously. Rather, they execute their services most carefully, following their predecessors who delivered the spiritual message unbroken to them. Those who listen to the Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but this should not be done in a challenging spirit. One must submit questions with a great regard for the speaker and the subject matter. This is also the way recommended in Bhagavad Gita. One must learn the transcendental subject by submissive oral reception from the right sources. Therefore, these sages address the speaker Sutta Goswami with great respect. So, this is very interesting, actually. I'm going to go read in text 6 as well, because this actually is leading directly into what we were going to be discussing this Friday, interestingly enough. The sages said, Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. A Goswami, or the bona fide representative of Sri Vyasadeva, must be free from all kinds of vices. The four major vices are 1. Illicit connection with women, 2. Animal slaughter, 3. Intoxication, 4. Speculative gambling of all sorts. A Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare sit on the Vyasasana. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasasana who is not spotless in character and who is not freed from the above-mentioned vices. He not only should be freed from all such vices, but must also be well versed in all revealed scriptures or in the Vedas. The Puranas are also parts of the Vedas, and histories like the Mahabharata or Ramayana are also parts of the Vedas. The Acharya, or the Goswami, must be well acquainted with all these literatures. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing is called Shravana, and explaining is called Kirtana. The two processes of Shravana and Kirtana are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. Only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject. Very interesting how he mentions how Kirtana, in this sense, also is absolutely essential. Absolutely amazing. So, and he explains specifically to understand the subject matter, one must be explaining it to be able to understand it. So this is very fascinating, actually. This applies to our situation tonight. So I find that I learn best by explaining and teaching, even more so than just reading directly, and this is confirmed in this verse. So the first thing we have to always remember is discussions on the Srimad Bhagavatam, as we're having now, like this, are very good for all devotees to have. Having discussions on Bhagavatam does not mean there's necessarily a class taking place. So for someone to give a formalized class, wonderful, thank you, Mahdi. For someone to give a formalized class as an acharya, as an official spiritual teacher, etc., in a formalized setting, it's very important that whoever is the most qualified in terms of following the 4 regulative principles, practically speaking, controlling their senses, etc., and actually engaging in daily Harinama Sankirtana, and very dedicated Japamala as well. Such an individual should be the person put on the seat. Now, in an assembly where those people are not available necessarily, of course you can go to the next best thing, or the next best individual that is available. Someone who is well enough versed in the scriptures, but who may not necessarily be following all the principles. But in the ideal situation, when the right person is available, the person who is the most qualified should always be the one given the Vyasasana in every case. This is very important because the purity of the message will be that much more pure and have that much more potency on the hearers if the individual teaching, preaching, etc. are themselves pure in practice. Okay, so so this is very important because when discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam, disclaimers. When discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's very important to understand, yes, that in this case we're having a discussion. So this isn't necessarily a formalized class, and people shouldn't be looking at me as some acharya or some Vyasasana seat person right now, in any case at all. But we're just having a discussion on the Bhagavatam, and I'm just relaying some of my insights on the subject matter, because I'm definitely not qualified to be in that position. To give a formalized lecture. I'm definitely not strictly following the no illicit sex principle, although I strive to daily. I am not yet, but I would like to. But the others, I'm doing my best to follow. I definitely don't eat meat. Definitely don't slaughter animals. Definitely don't intoxicate. I do video games off and on, but that's which is considered gambling. Yes, many devotees don't know this, but actually video games are a form of gambling. Speculative gambling, so stock market, that's all gambling stuff. Basically, so off and on I do, gaming, tabletop gaming, not gambling, but video games and stuff. Even if money's not involved, that actually classifies as gambling as well. Board games, etc. So anything that dice is involved in, period, even if there's no money exchanged, is still gambling, according to Prabhupada's standards and Bhaktisiddhanta's standards. So going into it now, the submissive spirit, this is very important, and it's important the devotees understand what this actually means. The submissive spirit is simply the spirit of genuinely wanting to understand. Okay, that is the submissive spirit. The submissive spirit is not some externally artificialized, like display type thing. Yes, we will naturally show respect, bow, etc. when someone is teaching, but submissiveness must not be misunderstood to mean where you basically just stop thinking and you just wipe your brain clean and just accept everything the spiritual teacher is saying without trying to actually understand what he's saying. It means submissiveness means genuinely wanting to understand. That's what this means. It means not having a preconceived notion that you want to prove or disprove to the spiritual teacher, but rather you have the genuine desire to understand deeper and further from what you already understand. That is submissiveness. So the submissiveness principle being misunderstood and misused has led to many different situations where individuals have been treated very poorly and have basically insulted their own intelligence by not thinking themselves on the subject matter enough while whoever's presenting it is presenting it. And this is very important. This must not take place. The individual who's hearing the subject matter must very deeply be thinking about the subject matter and trying to process what is being said. So this is really interesting. Now because this Friday we're going to be talking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, the reasons for his appearance, the reason why he was specifically sent by Radha and Krishna, or say, make Krishna specifically. Sri Radha is very merciful and graceful, so, but ultimately he was sent by Krishna to come here to this world to specifically reestablish the purity of the Vaishnava principles as they were originally during the time of the Pandavas and before, in previous ages, and also the standards that they were supposed to be all throughout Kali Yuga, but had diminished over time and been forgotten. So this is very important. A Goswami means one who can control their senses. So a bona fide representative of Sri Vyasadeva must be free from all the vices. So absolutely no illicit connection with women, absolutely no animal slaughter, no intoxication whatsoever, and no speculative gambling at all. So no gaming, no board gaming, none of that stuff. So a Goswami will not engage in any of those activities if they are to properly and correctly be classified as Goswami. Now, there are many individuals nowadays who are being classified as Goswami right and left, whereas that title simply does not accurately apply. So if one is engaging in any of the four non-regulative principles, they cannot be referred to as a Goswami under any circumstances, accurately speaking, for that term to be correct. They can be referred to as other things, Maharaj, this and that, other things, if they're a king or if they're a very exalted person but still not following the principles all the way, but they cannot be referred to as a Goswami unless they're actually a Goswami, unless they're actually controlling their senses. Because engaging in the four non-regulative activities is a symptom of one not controlling their senses. So, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura appeared, he appeared because, well, there's deeper reasons, but I'll explain the external reason, the externally observable reason, to everyone so they can understand some background. So the situation before Bhaktisiddhanta appeared was that the whole Vaishnava world, practically speaking, was in a state similar to where we're heading nowadays, almost with the Vaishnava world, where pretty much everyone everywhere had an idea of what Vaishnavism was, or what devotion to Vishnu or Krishna was, which involved not actually strictly following the four principles completely. And what I mean by this is people had it in their minds and heads that because people had not been following these strictly for so long, and that they were still engaging in all these Vedic rituals, horse sacrifices, animal sacrifices, etc., all these different things mixed in with the bhakti stuff, having illicit sex with one's wife outside of specifically for producing children, etc. All of these things had come to be accepted as the Vaishnava tradition, okay? Now, they were accepted as the Vaishnava tradition in a way that convinced pretty much the entire Vaishnava world erroneously that these are the eternal standards for Vaishnavas. Basically, in other words, people had it in their minds that, oh, if you have a wife and you're married, you can engage in illicit sex off and on for pleasure outside of just producing children. That's okay. That's always been the standard. Eating meat and sacrifices is okay as long as it's done from the Ashwamedha Yagya, etc. Basically, okay, if you board game or do a little game in this, that's okay too, as long as you don't excess with it. And then if you basically, intoxicate here and there, off and on, that's not a big deal, as long as you're predominantly focused on your devotion to Krishna. So all these things were basically what the culture had adapted and now accepted as what Vaishnavism was. So then what happened was Bhaktisiddhanta came in, and it was like a tidal wave, because he immediately crushed all this stuff, swept it aside, and established the original standards as they have always been eternally, and clarified to people what the original standards have always been in terms of shaking everybody up and convincing them that, and through understanding and Shastric understanding, that, and Shastric proof as well, that the only way to actually attain Vaikuntha, especially the only way to attain devotion and dwelling with Krishna, residence in Mathura, Dvaraka, and Vrindavana specifically, the only way for this to be achieved is if the individual legitimately engages in every single thing they do specifically for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, and completely abstaining intentionally, voluntarily for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna as the symptom, okay, as the observable symptom of gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna for their infinite loving kindness to them, and the symptom that an individual is tapped into that relationship with Radha and Krishna. So he did this to sift out all the fakes and flakes from the Vaishnava world. Now, many people hated Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when he did this. They all disliked him doing this because he called every one of them out, point by point by point. So what they started to do is they started to claim that he was the one coming in and changing everything. He was trying to, subvert everything from the Vedas, trying to make householder standards almost at the level of sannyasi standards, etc., when in fact he was actually reestablishing what had eternally been there, what Krishna had originally established. And it had always been the case. It's just people had forgotten for so long, and they developed a new branched off pseudo-Vaishnava culture that wasn't actually pure, correct, or proper, and therefore they assumed that that was the correct culture. Now, these individuals, in their minds, they believed that they believed so many erroneous things, and what they were doing was they were, in essence, quite simply, they were engaging in bhakti mixed with tantra. That's all they were doing. So basically what they were doing was they were mixing mode of ignorance and mode of passion practices, ideologies, etc., into their worship, their devotion, and all these other things. And what they were doing was they wanted to gratify their penises, their tongues, and their stomachs. And so therefore, because they wanted to gratify these organs, and because they wanted to have some sense gratification in the process of their Krishna consciousness, right? They wanted to basically, be devoted to Radha and Krishna, but also at the same time be able to engage in sensual indulgences also at the same time. And Bhaktisiddhanta was like this. He's like, nah, this isn't going to fly. Because he said, because he realized, he understood that the only way individuals would go back to Goloka, which was his mission, to bring everyone back to Goloka, Vrindavana, the highest possible state, was for the truth of all these matters to be completely explained to people and broadcast widely. So attempts were absolutely made on his life. In at least one instance, there was an actual physical attack made on his life, and his disciples helped him and got him out of it. And interestingly enough, Bhaktisiddhanta's standards were so pure and refined and perfect that even his disciples, who were originally affectionate to him afterwards, after he left the planet, actually, and during the time, actually were deviating from his teachings and actually started accusing him of all these things. So this was really crazy. And Srila Prabhupada was the one who maintained the pure torch of the Vaishnava understanding, the Siddhanta, the teachings, etc. And of course, we know Srila Prabhupada is the one who established on paper ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and he's the one who specifically was empowered by Krishna, empowered by Radha and Krishna to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. And then back to India in the pure form and then there were certain individuals in India practicing it in purely, but they were extremely rare individuals. Some were, but the vast majority were still adhering to the old, what they assumed was the Vaishnava tradition, what they assumed was the Vedic tradition, etc. So we're going to go much more into all this stuff about it on Friday, much more the specifics of what they practice, what they believe, what they teach, all that stuff. But right now we're just going to focus on the introductory, the big scope picture of it all. And we're going to talk about how this relates to today as well, right now. So the situation right now that's happening in the Vaishnava world is exactly the same situation. Very similar, almost to a T, to what was going on when Bhaktisiddhanta appeared and why he was sent to rectify this, okay? Because what's going on now is devotees at large and throughout the world have all assumed, there's this assumption that's gone around the world at large, that Harinama Sankirtana, this practice of going out loudly chanting the holy names, broadcast in public, there's this broadcast popular opinion now that this activity is basically just an optional activity, that you can actually just optionally choose to focus on the four regs and chant Japamala of the Krishna's names, and then basically just, not necessarily have to do Harinama Sankirtana. This is completely erroneous in every way. It's just like when the Vaishnavas back then thought that they didn't have to strictly follow all the four regulative principles. Same thing right now. Vaishnavas not thinking that they have to engage in Harinama Sankirtana every day to attain Goloka. This consciousness, it's basically, it's a lazy man's consciousness is what it is. It's a lazy man's consciousness, it's a cop-out consciousness, it's a subversive consciousness, and it's a symptom, actually, that the individual wants to focus on their tongue, stomach, and genital gratification in the name of devotional service, and pass that off in the form of private chanting, private scriptural study only, and private activities only. Okay? So this is why Bhaktisiddhanta was very fiery about, unless one is already a pure devotee completely, they absolutely must not engage in private chanting or private activities, etc. And he wrote a series of prayers called the Prayers to His Own Mind, which he basically was explaining to all of us in these prayers that, oh mind, you're so proud of chanting in private, but when you're chanting in private, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's more elaborate in his prayer, but what he was saying in the prayer was, mind, you're focusing on having sex with women and gathering wealth and followers while you're chanting Krishna's names in private. He says, you're just making a big show of it all. He said, because you're not going out and preaching and engaging in Harinama Sankirtana, you're simply fooling yourself and fooling the whole world. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta said in his prayer. So, Bhaktisiddhanta was very adamant that devotees, even if they are at the level of purity, that it's very, very important to preach, at least even for the devotees who do end up becoming completely pure, and at the end of their life, during a retirement phase, decide to chant in private, etc., to leave their body in that way. That was fine, as long as the majority of their life was spent in actual preaching activities. So, in actual Harinama Sankirtana, and in actual writing and distributing of books, which encourage people to engage in Harinama Sankirtana. So, we're at the phase now where we're at the brink of pure devotees soon, right now, appearing among us. In fact, there's some that have appeared among us. Some Raja Rishis will soon be appearing, because the situation now is such that it is necessary and required for pure devotees to appear among us, to rectify the situation as it is. So when these pure devotees appear, they will reestablish Harinama Sankirtana properly on a large scale, and they will also reestablish Varnashrama Dharma properly as the side effect of this Harinama Sankirtana. This will take place, and this must take place, because this is Radha and Krishna's plan and arrangement, and their plan cannot be thwarted. So mark my words, this will occur, because there is no situation in history where Krishna ever lets the material world rot when there is a need for principles to be reestablished and brought back in as they are. He always will come himself or send his representative. So Radha and Krishna themselves will be appearing also, as well, naturally, through so many different technologies, the virtual reality tech, the synthetic tech, etc. And they will also be sending their representatives among us very soon. So look forward to this, and with great joy look forward to this, because this will be happening to uplift the entire world. Now, we need to understand something very importantly about this. Hey, welcome, Edvin. We need to understand what celibacy actually is, and what brahmacharya actually is. Now, this is another fact that Bhaktisiddhanta brought back, which people had misunderstood this very, very much so, up until he appeared. Now, brahmacharya is the process. Brahmacharya is actually more a symptom than it is a practice. So, what I mean by this, and please pay attention very clearly, brahmacharya is the ability to practice brahmacharya in Kali Yuga, okay, is a symptom of an individual being connected to their relationship with Radha and Krishna, or their expansions, Lakshmi, Vishnu, Balarama, etc. And genuinely so. So the ability to practice brahmacharya completely is the symptom of being connected in this way. There's no case, there's no situation in Kali Yuga where an individual will be perfect in brahmacharya and then that will lead them to pure devotion to Radha and Krishna. It does not work that way in Kali Yuga. It does not work that way. It may have worked that way in previous yugas, Dvapara Yuga, etc., because the situation was different. Lust did not operate the way it does today. Okay, and once these Raja Rishis appear, they will clarify all these points, which have needed clarification for the longest time. Ayendra Prabhu clarified these points, that Harinama Sankirtana is the eternal function of the living being. Literally. Harinama Sankirtana is not just the process for this age, Kali Yuga, not just the process to get back to Godhead. If you're not engaging in Harinama Sankirtana and everything that entails, then you're not engaging in your eternal function. Period. And by not engaging your eternal function, you don't make it back to Goloka. This is Bhaktisiddhanta's central point that he kept making over and over and over again. So, because what was going on was that these individuals who were preaching Krishna consciousness, yes, they were devotees on one level, but the problem was they weren't actually Goswamis. They were devotees, but they weren't Goswamis. So they may have actually been devoted to Radha and Krishna in many cases to one degree or another, but mixed in with that, they were engaging in illicit sex with women behind closed doors and doing these types of things and not mentioning it in public. And even if they did mention it in public, they would justify it and try to say, oh, it's the original standard, it's not a big deal, etc. And because they were doing this, they could not be classified as Goswamis. They could not be classified as sannyasis, etc. And therefore, Bhaktisiddhanta called them out for that specifically in all these points and so many aspects of wrong preaching, etc. like this. So they really didn't like him for this reason. But what's interesting about his methods is that the Vaishnavas and devotees who were actually sincere, they were never afraid of Bhaktisiddhanta. They actually would approach him and they would feel very comfortable and relaxed around Bhaktisiddhanta, even when he showed his great fury towards these deviants, etc. To the point that those who could understand who Bhaktisiddhanta was internally, and those who were genuinely connected to Radha and Krishna in sincerity, they would not even be faced if Bhaktisiddhanta showed them direct anger face to face. They would appreciate and love this fury that was shown, and they would understand what Bhaktisiddhanta's intention was. They would understand that Bhaktisiddhanta's feelings towards them were loving and affectionate and not at all inimical. But the ones who were bogus and unsincere, Prakriti Sahajias, etc., these individuals would always leave his assemblies. They would always leave his presence, and they would start speaking propaganda against him, because they couldn't hide anymore. They couldn't hide their illicit sex with women anymore around Bhaktisiddhanta. They couldn't hide the fact that they were doing these things, but they wanted to. See, that was the thing. So they wanted to keep preaching about Radha and Krishna, about the Ashtakaliya Leelas and all this other stuff, but they couldn't anymore because Bhaktisiddhanta nonstop kept calling them out, and now they were exposed to people for being bogus, and they couldn't stand this. So, but the sincere devotees, so what he would do is he would purposefully read. There was one instance he would purposely read from Shriyas Upanishad, and he did many similar things like this. So he read from this book until all the false, non-sincere devotees left the assemblies, out of disgust. They were wanting to hear Radha and Krishna Leela. They were wanting to hear about the intimate sexual pastimes of Radha and Krishna in Goloka, but he wouldn't actually go into those topics at all. He would specifically not talk about those topics because he knew that the fakes were there. And then when the fakes left, then he would start talking about the Ashtakaliya Leela. And he specified, now I will start talking about Ashtakaliya Leela, even though I know you're not ready to hear it, to the ones who were actually sincere. So he was very merciful as well to those who even weren't ready, but he was paying attention to the sincerity of their heart. He could tell that the ones who were genuinely wanting to reestablish their relationship with Radha and Krishna were the ones who would continue listening, they would stay, and they would appreciate and love Shriyas Upanishad as much as the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna. The ones who were perverted with temporal sex desire as their main focus, they would not find any interest in discussions on Shriyas Upanishad that were prolonged and at length, because they thought that they wrongly assumed that Shriyas Upanishad was only dealing with the beginning level things, the neophyte, etc. practices. So this is another thing Bhaktisiddhanta crushed. He crushed the idea that the quote-unquote basic principles, the basic standards, are only for neophytes. He said, no, once you have attained full purity to set the example for everyone else, you should also maintain all the other standards, all the rules and regulations, all the principles, even if you do not have to. You must still do this for the benefit of others. And he said, this is the mood of the gopis. This is the mood of Vrindavana. This is the mood of Srimati Radharani. It is the mood of giving love and affection to others, preaching to others, giving them causelessly the holy name and love of Krishna. Causelessly. Which means that they, the gopis, when they appear in the temporal external world, they purposefully follow the external regulative principles, and they purposefully do this to set the example for everyone else to follow. To clarify that the intimate sexual interactions between Radha Krishna and the gopis have absolutely nothing to do with material, temporal, mundane, lustful activities. Completely two distinct activities. And that the symptom of engaging actually in those activities, internally in meditation, is that manifests in the ability and enthusiasm to maintain celibacy with the external body. This is how the gopis preach, teach, and this is how they show us the path. Okay? So people claiming that the gopis' path has to do to some degree or another with sex desire as we currently understand it, etc., are completely misunderstanding. They do not understand the first thing about the gopis or Srimati Radharani's position whatsoever. Anyone who claims that or has those ideologies is completely misunderstood and misled. And you can always trace it back to a false guru somewhere along the line. Always, in every case. Teaching incorrect principles. Now what's interesting also was he specifically did things like he would purposefully have devotees sing who weren't known for having beautiful voices, right? Or externally pleasing to the ear voices. He would purposely have them leading the Harinama Sankirtana to make the point that it's about the devotion, it's the sincerity. It's not about pleasing people's ears, and it's not even about the ears of people around, even devotees' ears being pleased. It's about pleasing Radha and Krishna and their associates with our offerings, period. There's no consideration of external pleasing of people externally speaking. None. The consideration is pleasing Radha and Krishna only. Now, if that manifests in the form of beautiful music, wonderful. If it manifests in the form of a devotee who is not given the ability to sing beautifully by Radha and Krishna, then that will manifest their devotion to them in that way, and they will appreciate. But Radha and Krishna sometimes do this. They sometimes arrange that individuals are quote-unquote lacking abilities or etc. to show specifically to people. This is about the sincerity and purity of devotion, which has nothing to do with external displays or what's externally visible at all. Okay? Welcome, Ishvara Nandini. So, I ran into these instances recently also. This is a very modern phenomenon that's actually creeping back in, where there's this whole Raganuga Bhakti craze that everybody's shouting about and stuff. Where basically it's a misunderstanding of Raganuga Bhakti, where everybody's saying, "Oh, okay, show us tears, show us tears, show us that you have ecstatic symptoms, etc., etc." And you can immediately just show them text directly from Prabhupada, directly from Bhaktisiddhanta, and so many other instances where they say very specifically, even if you are feeling symptoms of ecstasy, to the degree that you are able to contain them and hide them and not display them publicly, you should do so. Specifically, tears pouring forth from the eyes, these types of things. If you're able to withhold them and not show them publicly, do so. If you're not able to and they come forth naturally, then that will be seen and recognized by other pure devotees as being pure symptoms. They will recognize them as pure symptoms. So if you try to hide them but you can't, they will be recognized as pure symptoms. However, the pure devotees and the devotees who really know what is going on, who can read and understand other people's psychologies, they will be able to detect immediately an individual who is crying tears of ecstasy for the intent of making a display to gather followers and to convince others that they're engaging in so-called Raganuga Bhakti, etc. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura had a lot to say on this topic, because Raganuga Bhakti simply has to do with the internal state of the individual, why you're going about your devotional service. The externals remain the same. So this is what Raganuga means. Raga means emotions, means spontaneous feelings of attraction, okay? And Anuga means to follow. So this means to specifically follow a particular inhabitant of Vrindavana, a particular servant of Krishna. It could be Sri Radha, it could be Lalita Devi, one of the gopis, it could be Mother Yashoda, it could be one of Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, it could be the flute of Krishna, any one of Krishna's associates. This could be that one is practicing Raganuga with, following, okay? But this has to do with your internal impetus as to why you go about your devotion. So Raganuga Bhakti is not something that is externally displayable or visible to the external eyes of people. You have to internally feel that someone is engaged in Raganuga Bhakti beyond what you're seeing, okay? Because Vaidhi Bhakti involves the rules and regulations in devotion to Krishna, but Vaidhi specifically has to do with rules and regulations because it's what Krishna instructs us to do, because that's what Krishna wants, because that's what helps purify us from material contamination, etc. But that's the reason those things are being followed in Vaidhi Bhakti, okay? In Raganuga Bhakti, you're still following the same external principles. Make no mistake about this. So Ayendra Prabhu is very clear about this, and Bhaktisiddhanta. Still following the four regs, still not engaging Lisa, still preaching correctly, still doing daily Harinama Sankirtana. But your internal impetus and drive is different. So you're spontaneously excited to get up in the morning and serve Radha and Krishna in Mangalarti, to chant a large amount of Japamala, to study the scriptures deeply, to go about all your devotional activities, specifically Harinama Sankirtana, without the need for injunctions telling you to do so. That's Raganuga Bhakti. And which sometimes manifests in a devotee not 100% strictly following them all, but the devotees in Raganuga Bhakti never purposefully reject or throw aside the regulative principles in a scoffing manner. That's not necessary at all, I won't do it. If they don't follow the principles, it's simply because their Raganuga is more potent and more important, and therefore the regulative principles become less important. But they're never neglected. This is very important to remember. So what's going around now today, what the big craze is, and this is starting to spread. It's like starting with one person, then another, where people are now trying to claim that Raganuga Bhakti automatically means, by default and by definition, that a person is displaying tears from the eyes, that a person is showing ecstatic symptoms publicly, that a person is all this other stuff, and that person doesn't need to follow the four regs. And they're making it out to be that the four regs are actually restrictive, etc. But if anyone has actually read the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's purports, the regulative principles are called the regulative principles of freedom. Very, very important. So the regulative principles are not restrictive principles. Anyone saying that they're restrictive principles is fool number one. And they're misleading their followers, and they're misleading everyone. The regulative principles are the regulative principles of freedom from material contamination. Now, what's interesting about this and how I was able to detect this new trend as being false and bogus is that I've been talking to these people engaged in this stuff. I'm very happy that Raganuga Bhakti is being preached about as a principle and a topic. Actual, genuine Raganuga Bhakti is important to preach about and important to engage in. Every devotee should be engaging in Raganuga Bhakti, ideally more so than Vaidhi Bhakti, still following the four regular principles in the process, and still not externally displaying ecstatic symptoms so as not to mislead others, and so as not to make devotion into some externally displayed thing that is defined by external displays of tears, etc., and all these types of things, okay? So, to clarify that that's not those things. But the point was, so I was talking to these people, and I was like, yeah, this is really good this is happening. Yep, freedom, exactly. And I'm like, this is great that Raganuga Bhakti is talking, but then I specifically go into this. But what are you teaching about the importance of celibacy? Because this is always how you can distinguish Prakrita Sahajya, by definition, from actual correct preaching. What is being taught about brahmacharya, what brahmacharya actually is, and what is being taught about that correlation between one's relationship with Radha and Krishna in Goloka. What is being taught about this? So I would ask, and then they would say, oh, brahmacharya, that's just for Brahmins, that's just for, like, that's just one of the regular principles. Oh, but once you have Raganuga Bhakti, you don't actually have to follow the no illicit sex principle as much anymore. You can just kind of sometimes break it and stuff. That's all for the Vaidhi Bhakti guys, the neophytes, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, nope, that's not correct. You're preaching falsely about brahmacharya. So you're preaching good. You're preaching about Raganuga Bhakti. That's good. But at the same time, you're misleading people by telling them, welcome Manojit Gulati. You're misleading. So I was telling them, you're misleading people by, you're preaching Raganuga on one hand, but then you're misleading them on the no illicit sex principle. Basically, now you're convincing everybody wrongly that now, as long as they have Raganuga, they have authorization to now engage in illicit sex off and on, if the urge feels like it, and it's an okay thing to do. It's like, yes, Radha and Krishna will forgive you, and they still love you. Of course they will. But the thing is, if you keep doing those things, won't make it out of material conditioning, is the point. So it's like, on their end, they're unconditionally loving, and yes, but you yourself will keep yourself locked in a material body and an externalized mind if you voluntarily engage in illicit sex. And especially if you do so, trying to pass it off as Raganuga Bhakti. So I pointed this out, and I kept on this point over and over and over again. Yes, let's preach Raganuga Bhakti, keep spreading this, keep chanting the Hare Krishna, all this stuff, but please do not mislead people about this brahmacharya principle. Naturally, everyone can understand the celibacy principle is not the be-all, end-all of pure devotion. It is a symptom of pure devotion. Okay? So there's these misunderstandings that have been floating around, but this Raganuga stuff, please, my friends, you'll notice this and you'll recognize it immediately when you see it. Always keep on these people about what are they preaching about the importance of brahmacharya and about what celibacy actually is. Okay? Now, there is a pastime of Lord Chaitanya these people like to use, okay? It's also, they misunderstand this story as well. They like to use this story to try and justify their own illicit sex inclinations, okay, in the name of Raganuga Bhakti. Now, this story has to do with Lord Chaitanya rejecting an individual from his assembly because he was, this individual is known for being a strict brahmachari, strict celibate, etc. And as far as I understand, I'll have to read the story again, this individual is also a Vaishnava or devotee on one level or something like that. That part I'm not sure of, though. But the point was, Lord Chaitanya rejected from assembly to show this principle that brahmacharya itself, in and of itself, was not the way to pure devotional and spontaneous love for Krishna. Yes, that is correct. But what they fail to leave out, and what they conveniently like to leave out, is the fact that the impetus to practice brahmacharya comes from Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, not the other way around. And that was actually what Lord Chaitanya was trying to make a point of. He was saying, no, it's not that brahmacharya and then you achieve this. No, you connect with me in love and affection spontaneously, then the symptom is your brahmacharya practice and your correct preaching thereof. That's what Lord Chaitanya was actually doing there. He wasn't saying, oh, come on into my assembly now that you're a Raganuga, and now you can just reject that. Basically, Lord Chaitanya was not saying that, oh, if you're a Raganuga Bhakti, you can still engage in illicit sex because you're a Raganuga, and then now you're welcome to my assembly. But those Vaidhi guys, they have to practice brahmacharya because they're Vaidhis, and they're not Raganuga. But, okay, so according to these new standards that these people are preaching now, literally every devotee that's sincere and enthusiastic about devotion to Radha and Krishna and spontaneously serving them is automatically not needing to follow the no illicit sex principle anymore, or any of these principles strictly anymore, just because they're spontaneously attracted. Well, that would mean that every single sincere devotee on the planet is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti then. But then then you keep on them about this, and then they lead into one thing after another, and but then it always leads what? Guess what? It always leads to a personality cult, a person who's doing this preaching. It always leads back to this. Instead of it strays from the actual principles of Scripture, it leads to a person instead. Okay? Once again, that's the second symptom you can recognize for a bogus teaching. It always becomes centered around a person, a personality cult thing, instead of what they're actually teaching. So it becomes centered around the individual rather than what they're teaching. Okay? More so around the individual. And that's the secondary effect. So the point is, do not buy into this ideology that Raganuga Bhakti means the devotee has authorization to engage in illicit sex. No. All that means is if someone is genuinely a Raganuga Bhakta, they will, if you make the mistake of engaging in illicit sex, you'll bounce back quicker, and you'll be able to reestablish your sadhana quicker than persons who's only engaged in Vaidhi Bhakti, yes. But that's only if you're genuinely engaged in Raganuga Bhakti. Not if you're actually desiring actual sex with women in the material world, or men, or whatever the case may be. And at the same time trying to pass that off as Raganuga Bhakti. Oh, it's just my natural state as a human being. I have sexual urges instead. No. You get into really like shaky territory there, because basically like they describe in the Bible, building your house on the sand instead of on a solid foundation. Okay, I'm all for, and actually I prefer, and this is another reason how I can, and you can recognize these types of people, is that I've always been interested in Raganuga Bhakti, and that's always what I've been practicing my entire devotional life. Yes, I'm definitely not pure, but what's the fact of this? I'm not preaching wrongly about celibacy, and none of you are either. So most of you, every one of you, practically speaking, who gets along with me and is my friend, are already inclined towards the Raganuga Bhakti path already. So it's not, so Raganuga is not some like rare, exceptional, like off the wall thing that only a few people are doing. It's Raganuga Bhakti is the standard for all devotees across the board, what we're all supposed to be doing in the process of following the four regular principles. We're all supposed to be engaging in Raganuga Bhakti internally. Okay? And preaching the same. That's what we're all supposed to be doing. Now, you'll find in these sanghas too, people are not understanding this principle. They're thinking, oh, Raganuga Bhakti is just some super rare thing that only a few key individuals are allowing people to have, and that's not it at all. In fact, Raganuga Bhakti is simply just a different version of going about the same principles. All the actual levels of devotion and stuff are a completely independent thing of Raganuga and the Vaidhi Bhakti. Just like Anartha-nivritti, the phase, is distinct from Anartha-nivritti, the process. They're two distinct things also. So very, very important, because we're going to be running into this much more as the days go on. It's just the same exact thing that was going on when Bhaktisiddhanta appeared. If Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura were to appear today, he would absolutely be roaring against everything that's happening now. He would not be putting up with any of this nonsense that's going on as devotional consciousness. In fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura would go so far, and I know it for a fact, and I would appreciate him doing this actually. But this is the thing, seeing internally. He would go so far as to also speak against my music video stuff, the encoding, etc., all this stuff. He would be speaking against this. All glories to Bhaktisiddhanta. I know why he would be speaking against this stuff. Because, once again, this stuff, yes, it can lead people to Krishna consciousness, but still, it's still not the proper standards. None of it is. So, I'm telling everyone now, the stuff that I do would not be tolerated by Bhaktisiddhanta either. But because I appreciate this fact, and I appreciate, even if he were to show fury at me, and I understand his mood, that he loves me and feels affection towards me, so what would happen was he would display the anger and fury, and then immediately afterwards he would display intense affection towards me. Because I didn't want to run away or cower in fear, I appreciated what he was saying, and I understood his purpose. And also, he would not be inclined to do that with me at the same time, because he would understand that I appreciate him, and he understands me, etc. So Bhaktisiddhanta didn't show fury to the ones who were sincere and loving and affectionate. Even when he did, he knew that they understood what he was doing, and that they wouldn't misunderstand him. You see, same thing with me. Bhaktisiddhanta could shout at me all day and night, and I would appreciate every single shout, all of them, directly to my face, because what I would be experiencing is his affection for me in Goloka Vrindavana. Well, what other people would be thinking or assuming, oh my God, he's angry at Kamadeva Dasa, he's actually furious at him, he actually wishes him ill or something. I'm like, no, he doesn't wish me ill. He's speaking the truth. He's speaking that, yes, Radha and Krishna are present as everyone and everything else, but you must teach according to the proper standards. And I'm like, yes, you're correct, Bhaktisiddhanta. The way I preach and teach is not according to the proper standards. Therefore, I appreciate what you're saying. And see, here's the thing. That mood and that understanding and appreciation of Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada is the key to being able to express your individuality and at the same time appreciating deeply their mood and why they did what they did. All right? So don't you've heard it from me directly. Any of these people who are going to come in and try to claim, okay, Kamadeva Dasa and Bhaktisiddhanta wouldn't approve of what you're doing and Prabhupada wouldn't. I know they wouldn't approve of it. And I appreciate the fact that they wouldn't approve of it because their standards are that much higher. And those are the standards I want to get to. Okay? So it's like, yeah, their messages and stuff are there, the encoding is there, but still, it's ideal that we don't watch any mundane music videos. Or when I say mundane, I should say anything that's encoded in a way that there's no necessity to watch or listen to anything aside from Harinama Sankirtana, directly from Mahendra Prabhu, Prabhupada, and the previous acharyas. So there's no necessity to look at music videos or any of this other stuff. Those things are there for individuals who aren't 100% all the time doing the Harinama Sankirtana directly, aren't following 100% strictly, etc. They're just there as little boosters to get people back on track. That's all. But the actual standards don't change. So the standards won't change to devotees being authorized now to listen to music, because it's encoded, I have an authorization to listen to it. No, that's not how it works. The music's designed to get you to engage in Harinama Sankirtana and listen to only Harinama Sankirtana 24/7. So if you're already doing that, you don't need the encodings. You don't need the messages because you're already doing what the messages are telling you to do. You see what I'm saying? And this is just, in my case, this is the point that I'm trying to make. In other people's cases, it might be a different thing. But the thing is, preaching is given to everyone so that all levels of understanding and grasp and appreciation can appreciate the preaching and gradually advance, right? So, Hare Krishna, thank you, Shvaranandani. Your encouragement is always very much appreciated. So, yeah. So yeah, because there's going to be people years over and over and over again that are going to just keep going, oh, Kamadeva, your standards aren't what Prabhupada said. Or yes, I know they're not the standards, and I'm openly admitting that they're not the standards. So that can't be used against me. Just like my porn addiction can't be used against me, nor can anything else be used against me. I'm immune to all that crap because I've been the first one to declare it to everyone first. So it can't be used as collateral against me. So, So the advantage is it puts me in a very powerful, or I should say advantageous position to preach Krishna consciousness in ways that others are basically sort of restricted in not being able to do so, etc. Because I literally have nothing to hide. If anybody wants to ask me something, I will admit this to them. And, the point being that we need to focus on gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna every day for the situation we're in. So the very fact that we can see with our eyes in the day, the very fact that we have the ability to see, okay, is a blessing. The fact that we have the ability to taste, to breathe, to hear, to smell. I mean, these are actually Radha and Krishna's causeless mercy on us. They could easily arrange one day that all our senses are shut off and that we can't function sensually at all. That we can't see, can't smell, we can't hear, we can't taste. They could flick their finger and shut it all off like this immediately. That we couldn't be able to experience sex, none of it. They could just flick it all off instantly. So the symptom of gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna for everything that they're doing is symptomized by one's ability and enthusiasm to practice celibacy and brahmacharya. Okay, and this is this is the proof there. Now, if someone is not enthusiastic in this regards or not able to do so, it simply means that they're focused on using Radha and Krishna for their own sexual pleasure, like I am. And when someone is doing that, they can't be classified as an externally observable pure devotee. Period. And they can't be classified as a Goswami either. They're a Godasa. So I'm a Godasa because I'm serving my penis, my tongue, and my stomach on a daily basis. And at the same time, I'm trying to use Radha and Krishna for my own sense gratification. So therefore, I'm a Godasa, not a Goswami. So a Goswami is one who is following the four principles properly, who is celibate, enthusiastic, doing so, and that is the symptom of their direct connection with Radha and Krishna. So this whole idea that people can artificially practice celibacy in this age as like a practice, as like, okay, I'm going to practice celibacy and brahmacharya, and then from doing that, I'll get reciprocation from Radha and Krishna. It never works that way. It doesn't work that way at all, because that's not what brahmacharya actually is. And it's definitely not what it is in Kali Yuga. You could perform that austerity for 100 plus years, 1,000 plus years. The demons do that too. But it has nothing to do with devotion to Radha and Krishna at all. It's just a forced artificial austerity that's going to lead you to more intensive sexual pleasure in the materially conditioned state afterwards. Yeah. But you're going to still remain stuck within matter. Like, the celibacy by itself won't do anything to get you beyond matter, and it won't do anything at all by itself to increase your purity of devotion to Radha and Krishna. It's only when you engage in brahmacharya to please them that has the effect. Okay? So if you're just practicing brahmacharya to like develop potency or energy or like become more masculine, or this is all a bunch of crap. Because, you know, it's in terms of that's not doing it like that for those purposes, for like developing mystic abilities or whatever, or even for like you know, doing it to increase your purity of devotional practice or something. No, you have to be practicing celibacy to please the senses of Radha and Krishna. That is sex in Goloka Vrindavana. People don't understand this. They don't understand that sex in Goloka manifests in the material body as celibacy. This principle has been forgotten. It keeps getting forgotten over and over again. So until devotees understand this point, they will not actually be engaging in Harinama Sankirtana daily. They won't be doing it until this preaching and this teaching is spread by a Raja Rishi. Because I'm a Godasa, because I'm not a Goswami, I can preach this stuff all day and night for years on end, but it won't have the potency to actually change the world unless and until these Raja Rishis appear among us, who are actually following these principles correctly, and who therefore have the potency to spread this, like Prabhupada had the potency to spread this. So yes, people will look back, they'll be like, oh yeah, Kamadeva Dasa talked about all this stuff, etc. But the issue was, which is factual, he was still masturbating, he was still engaging in illicit sex, therefore he didn't have the potency, even though the message was accurate, he didn't have the potency to actually cause the message to have its full effect on others. You see what I'm saying? And that will be how the history reads and is seen, and that's the truth. So the idea is being the servant of the servant of the servant. So I will be the servant of the servant of the servant, which means the servant of these Raj Rishis, the servant of the Goswamis, the servant of the gopis, their associates, etc. By having this mood of the servant of the servant of the servant, which is the mood that Radharani and the gopis have, that is the mood that gets you to the intimate sexual pastimes of Goloka Vrindavana, by having the mood of being the servant of the servant of the servant. Okay? So don't make this mistake that the gopis themselves have the mood of being the infinite servant of the servant. So their mood is actually the mood of being your servant also. Make no mistake about this. The gopis' mood is not the mood of enjoying Krishna personally or directly for their own pleasure. That is not their mood. Their mood is giving the love and affection of Krishna to all other living beings causelessly, in spite of what pleasure they may lack or have. Either way, it's causeless, and it's completely for out of affection and love for you, the living entity. This is the mood of Radharani and the gopis. Okay? And this is actually the mood that keeps the gopis in experiencing those intimate pastimes. Because that is actually what moves Krishna's heart, consciousness, and mind. That is what moves the heart of Srimati Radharani as well. Because all of us can focus on our own sensual pleasure with them. That's easy. Because they're giving each of us infinite sensual pleasure in those pastimes anyway. So, the thing is, the ones who are shifting their focus away from their own sensual pleasure, giving back to Radha and Krishna in gratefulness and back to others, that is the mood of the gopis. That is how you stay in Goloka. That's how you maintain your existence in Goloka and don't experience illusory states. It's by focusing on giving to others completely. If you have any trace of selfish desire for your own sexual pleasure, you will remain an externalized material body. Period. Okay? You don't go to the transcendental world with those desires or consciousness left remaining. And you only will go to Vrindavana. So this whole idea that people are having now, that they can just make it to Vrindavana. Okay, I'll chant my rounds, 16 rounds a day plus, and I'll follow the 4 regs for the rest of my life, and that will get me to Goloka. No, that's not how you get to Goloka. You chant attentively 16 rounds in love and affection towards Radha and Krishna. You follow the 4 regular principles for their pleasure, and you engage in daily Harinama Sankirtana specifically as your main function. That is how you get back to Goloka. Okay? Now, Radha and Krishna will bring the individual back personally with their own free will and desire, etc., in spite of what the individual is doing or not doing. But the point is, on your end, you have to be in the right consciousness. And what this means is, you have to be in the consciousness of wanting to do things for their pleasure. Okay? So the ratio of your focus in this regards has to be overwhelmingly in that direction to please Radha and Krishna, the senses of them, etc., in this way to make it back to Goloka Vrindavana. Okay? So what I did in my case was I shifted my focus from gratifying my genitals, tongue, and stomach, etc., to shifting, okay, through these activities, please allow these activities to please you to some degree or to be desired by you from me to some degree. So this, even simple things like this, trying to shift the focus of what you're doing to pray that Radha and Krishna will accept it and be pleased with these activities, that's at least a starting point, at least a very good starting point that you can advantageously use to develop the pure consciousness further. Okay? So, I plan to only take this about a half hour in, but let us continue. So, does anyone have anything that you would like to mention now about these topics? Any further clarifications, etc.? Because that which is important is always worth repeating. So, the truth, which is the most important, must always be repeated. Now, this is very important what Prabhupada says in this. He says, one can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Okay? This is very important. He said the 2 processes of Shravana and Kirtana, hearing and explaining, are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. So if we're only hearing and we're never explaining, that is good to on one level, but it's not going to be, the explaining part is the Kirtana. Okay? So what that means is giving Radha and Krishna's love to others. That's what the Kirtana is. So reading Srimad Bhagavatam to others, explaining the message of Srimad Bhagavatam to others. Welcome, Loka Sakshi. That is the Kirtana. So if we're just keeping our devotion all to ourselves and we're not actually preaching and engaging in Harinama Sankirtana together, then if we're not specifically engaging in that activity of Kirtan, Harinama Sankirtana, preaching, etc., also with that, then what that means is we're focusing more on Radha and Krishna's intimacy with us, more so than on giving that intimacy to others. So therefore, we won't actually be able to experience that intimacy because, remember, the very thing that keeps the living entity and causes the living entity to enter matter in the first place is getting absorbed in the affection Radha and Krishna are giving you directly, and the ratio becomes excessive in the direction of your own gratification thereof. And when that happens, because they're giving you infinite pleasure, you may be a gopi, you may be a cowherd boy, you may be a flute, you may be any number of other beings in Goloka, pastime asura, a pastime demigod, a pastime whoever. But the fact is, your consciousness in Goloka is covered over by a temporal mind and externalized senses by sucking in the pleasure that Radha and Krishna are giving to you. Okay? because you're experiencing life as if you're the supreme enjoyer, because you're experiencing a level of enjoyment that is far beyond what the material mind could fathom in that real state. That is the pivot point of your consciousness, and you can choose to absorb in the pleasure you're getting from Radha and Krishna and others around you, or you can choose to give back in gratefulness and loving affection. That is manifested exactly in our devotional life in this world, in the form of how do we go about our devotion? Are we focusing on our private chanting alone, individually in private, and are following the four regs, or are we actually focused on giving love and affection to others? If our focus is on the private individual stuff only, and we're not at all, if we're refusing to preach or talk or speak to others or spread Krishna consciousness to others in this world, then we're simply engaging in the very thing that caused us to enter matter in the first place. So please understand this, my friends. The reason you entered matter to begin with was because you were sucking in the pleasure that Radha and Krishna are giving you. By doing so, you experience an illusory world around you. Okay? So if you're doing that exact same thing that originally got you here, that's not going to get you back to Goloka. Harinama Sankirtana is specifically the process and the purpose designed eternally to be your eternal function and to be what gets you back to Goloka, because that is your eternal function. Okay? Do not misunderstand this point. And this is why Bhaktisiddhanta spoke against this false, individualized practice, etc. Now, if someone is qualified for this and in the process of engaging in private japamala, regulative principles, and they're already a pure devotee, etc., something is going on internally between them and Radha and Krishna that is very significant, which is why they're doing that. Okay? Now, those are very rare cases, and that may end up happening with some of you too. That's fine, because even in those processes, with those particular individuals, their consciousness is on giving love and affection to all others, and it isn't on their own gratification from Radha and Krishna directly, okay, in the intimacy. Their consciousness is on spreading Krishna consciousness via that process, okay? So the molecules within their bodies are hearing this and experiencing their japamala, etc. The bacteria, the plants that are around them, the insects on the ground, all this stuff. So, but that is for those who are already pure devotees. Now, you won't know when you're a pure devotee, because the devotees don't consider themselves pure. You don't know when you've attained pure devotion. You'll never know, because that's the consciousness of purity, is that you never think you're pure, you never assume so. You're just pure, period. So when you become a pure devotee and you end up engaging in that, it'll be a spontaneous thing that just ends up happening. It won't be a pre-planned, plotted out thing that, okay, I'm going to calculatedly sit in one spot and do bhajana, and instead of doing Harinama Sankirtan. It's not going to work like that with pure devotees. It's going to be a thing, okay, Radha and Krishna are leading me to do this, to serve them in this way, and this is how I'll leave my body, meditating on them, etc. That's when that happens. But even then, there may be cases where they, and for the standard is to, if that isn't if they don't make a specific arrangement with you one-on-one for that to happen, for that to be your service to them, then Harinama Sankirtan is the standard. And even for them, those who do that, Harinama Sankirtan is still the standard for the majority of their devotional life before they do that. Still, in all cases. And even the case with the majority of us for the entirety of our devotional life. Continual Harinama Sankirtana, reaching out broadly in the public, broadcasting the holy names, until the very day we die and leave our bodies. Never any question of the Babaji stuff for most of us. Never any question of it. So don't let this Babaji thing become like a standard or ritual or rule among us. Please don't let this happen, my friends. That is simply a symptom of the individual living entity engaging in what originally caused them to enter matter, which is that begins by you fixating first on how the sensual pleasure from Radha and Krishna is coming towards you, and then now immediately you're experiencing matter. So a very vivid example of this. The gopis, so Radharani loves everyone so much. She loves the gopis so intensely that she's actually more happy when the other gopis are experiencing intimacy with Krishna than when Krishna is experiencing intimacy with her directly. She experiences more happiness from that. Seeing you directly, if you're a gopi, or whatever your rasa is, engage in your intimate pastimes with Krishna, whatever those may be. Okay? Even if you're a coward boy, etc. Radharani is more pleased to see you happy with Krishna than her own happiness directly with Krishna is. And because we know this about Radharani, and we have this affection for her also, we also arrange that Radharani meets with Krishna in private and are more happy to see her with Krishna in private, because also that's how she feels about us, and we know this. You see, it's both ways. Okay. Welcome, Arjun Sinj Parihar. Thank you for joining us tonight. So yes, Madi, it makes absolute sense. So here's a very vivid example of this. So quite literally, if someone is actually eternally a gopi in Parakiya Rasa, how you enter matter from that state, how you become conditioned, is very simple in many cases. There you go. Those the confirmations. Radha and Krishna always speak the truth, and they always relay the truth through all of their devotees, and every one of us. So we're all instruments in their service. So in the case here is, they're wanting us all to remember this message tonight, which is, when we're with them in Goloka Vrindavana, which we are now. Goloka Vrindavana is beyond space and time, okay? So never forget this. We're literally with them in the Ashtakaliya Leelas as we speak. All living entities are. There's no exceptions to this. Every living entity is eternally with them, okay? We talked about the branch off pastime streams, etc., and all this stuff, so everybody understand this now. The coming here, going back, ideologies and perceptions thereof, and how those are all various forms of conditioning, including and up to spiritual conditioning. So, very important. Think very deeply about this tonight and the next days that follow. If you're a gopi in Goloka Vrindavana, a very easy way you can become conditioned is when you're enjoying intimate pastimes with Krishna, by the arrangement of Srimati Radharani, you're experiencing the intense affection from Radha and Krishna being shown towards you directly, one-on-one, in intimacy. So Krishna is making love to you, face-to-face, one-on-one. You become absorbed and start fixating on how pleasurable that is, okay? Because think about this. That sensation of having intimacy with Radha and Krishna directly like that is going to be insanely pleasurable, beyond anything, materially speaking, could even fathom. That pleasure is extremely intense, okay? Now, the intensity thereof, you can very easily get absorbed in if you keep going in that direction. Oh my gosh, this is an amazing pleasure, that meditation. But then you keep going in that direction. Wow, I really am actually the supreme enjoyer. It's very easy to think that about yourself. Very easy to think that when you're experiencing that degree of affection coming from Radha and Krishna, which is genuine affection coming from them. It's not that Radha and Krishna don't feel that affection, they're just displaying it. They actually feel that degree of intensity towards you. That degree of intensity is what allows you to have the pivot point of getting absorbed. So when you're in the midst of this lovemaking and stuff, you could literally be in the midst of that, and now, boom, you're taking a material body, you're experiencing a birth, a little baby's body growing up in forms. Now you have a male body, female body in this world, whatever. Completely forgotten what was just happening between you and Radha and Krishna. It's going to be based on your individuality, how you perceive that relationship with them, and how you were meditating on your sense gratification with them while that was happening. That's how you're here now. So, therefore, you immediately can shift that around and be back right there immediately in Goloka, giving back affection to love and Radha Krishna, as if nothing had ever happened in the Ashtakaliya Leelas, full scope Goloka, okay? Without needing to go back or any of this other stuff, you'll just immediately be there when you're finally leaving this body by engaging in Harinama Sankirtan and shifting your consciousness back to that infinite gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna for that affection they're showing you. Understand? Very simple. Simple for the simple. Not complicated at all to understand. So now you can understand exactly how you enter matter in the first place, and how you're not actually here, and how the ideology of needing to go back, etc., is a branch off of that. And now now it's very easy to understand for the devotee all these topics. So nothing is confusing anymore. It's like the understanding of Tatastha Shakti, your marginal position, how that works, how the marginality actually works. It's very sensible, and it makes total sense, actually. Because Radha and Krishna are all affectionate and all merciful, they fulfill all the desires that you have. At the same time of fulfilling all the desires that you have, even if they're crazy, weird mental concoctions and stuff, they arrange situations that when you fall into that state, if it ever happens, that you will have experiences that will directly correlate to a new appreciation of that state you were just experiencing, which caused you to enter matter in the first place. Okay, with them. Now, from that point forward, that specific series of sensual meditations, gratifications, will not be able to entrap you the same way ever again. Never. Because now it will actually be an aspect and part of those pastimes in Goloka with Radha and Krishna. And all your materially conditioned stuff that went on will now have eternal significance in Goloka. Make sense? Okay, good. I hope it makes sense to everyone. Because this is what all the acharyas teach in all the scriptures. The ones who teach correctly. This is the situation. So we can understand now how we enter matter. And if we're as devotees, so let's see an example. If a devotee is focusing all day on chanting their japamala, okay, they're following all the four rites, but they're not engaging in Harinama Sankirtana, what happens is, yes, you can get up to the point of getting close to experiencing what you originally experienced with Radha and Krishna, but it's still going to be foggy. It's going to be a shadow version. It's not going to be the full real thing. Basically, it's like this. You're going to be reversing the process up to a certain point, okay, if you do that. But you're not going to be able to fully reverse the process because you're not actually pushing your consciousness into the infinite gratefulness mode. So I'm going to thrust and give back infinite affection to you, Radha and Krishna, out of gratefulness. You're basically just up to this wall of, I'm enjoying this pleasure from Radha and Krishna. Therefore, you're still stuck on the temporal material side. Okay? You might be seeing the pastimes you're having with Radha and Krishna to various degrees in meditations, etc., but you're not going to actually be able to get there and stay there and be there unless you actually go all the way with the gratefulness and the affection, which manifests as the symptom of understanding these principles, as actually doing Harinama Sankirtana every day, and by preaching every day and spreading Krishna consciousness daily. Okay? That is what gets you back to Goloka. That is what gets you back into those immersive sensual activities with Radha and Krishna in the real state. And that is manifest when you're actually experiencing those relationships and interactions with them as your ability to practice celibacy in this body. Okay? That's how it works. That's how this has always worked. Yes, they are very unfortunate, Mati, to not have all this information. So, but the thing is, the ones who are sincere Christians always take to Krishna consciousness, always. The fully sincere Christians who are not specifically more interested in serving Sadashiva or Isha, which is, of course, Krishna's expansion, Lord Shiva's original form, the Christians who are sincere but are interested more in serving Krishna in that capacity will remain Christians like that, and they may attain the spiritual realm with Krishna as Isha, as Isus, as Ishvara, in his transcendentally conditioned version of transcendence, basically, or his realm of transcendence there. Just like the ones who insist on the Vaikuntha relationships with Krishna will also end up in Vaikuntha, etc. Now, this is very interesting. This terminology we use, we're actually Krishnavas. We're actually Radha Krishnavas. That's the fact. We're not actually Vaishnavas. But the reason we're called Vaishnavas, people need to correctly understand this, is because Krishna as Vishnu is God. So when it comes to like worshipful devotion, etc., these types of things, that has to do with the relationship between the living being and Krishna in his God function role. Okay, the more intimate stuff is the Krishnava stuff, but on the external plane, because a lot of people use this false argument, oh, you're actually called Vaishnavas because you're actually worshiping Vishnu. They don't understand. It's like, no, because worship itself has to do with worshiping Vishnu. Intimacy beyond worship has to do with Krishna, which is beyond the concept of worship, beyond the concept of sampradaya, beyond all these concepts altogether. But we say Vaishnavas because that has to do with Krishna is the source of Vishnu, and then the worshipful process involves Krishna being interacted with as God, as Vishnu. So this is the thing people need to understand. Especially in our sampradaya, they need to understand this. Because a lot of people from the outside will say, oh yeah, see, ultimately our worship of Vishnu is actually the highest, and it's legitimate because you're also called Vaishnavas, and you're also basically acknowledging that you're worshiping Vishnu, etc. It's like, but they don't understand this dynamic between the processes, the formalized processes being referred to in specific ways versus what's internally actually going on. Basically, they associate the externally observable stuff with what's internally going on, and that is actually very much so to do with their Vaikuntha conditioning in their consciousness. They're conditioned to worship Krishna according to that spiritual conditioning type. And he's facilitated them in those other three sampradayas to do so. You know, so because there's a Lakshmi Sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya, and then there's one more Sampradaya. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to say it wrong, but yeah, and then there's of course ours, the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We don't have to call ourselves Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That's just the thing is, Brahma Sampradaya is actually more accurate because Gaudiya basically that reference to us came in later, because Gaudiya is more, on the external plane version of that word, it's referring to a locale within Bengal. Now, Krishna consciousness is way beyond Bengal; it's infinite beyond this. Okay, has having to do with that's where Lord Chaitanya appeared, etc. So, we're actually the Brahma Sampradaya, the Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya is the more accurate way to say it. But the Gaudiya Sampradaya part of it isn't necessary because we're actually the Brahma Chaitanya Sampradaya. And then, of course, the Gaudiya word has a deeper transcendental meaning, of course, naturally. But what's been happening is the Gaudiya term has started to get overly associated with the locale of Bengal, etc., to where people are now thinking when they hear Gaudiya, oh, you're talking about the branch of Vaishnavism that came from Bengal, when it's actually, this is the actual highest transcendental truth, not localized to Bengal, and did not actually originate in Bengal at all. Lord Chaitanya is eternally in the spiritual world. Oh, okay, here's the thing. Amadi, you were mentioning this a bit, so topics along this regards. Robin was mentioning some stuff about this topic as well. Now, and I've mentioned this before, but to clarify once again, both Radha and Krishna are in Goloka, the highest Goloka, and also at the same time, simultaneously, on a different pastime stream, which is actually at the same level of full-scale Goloka, is the pastimes of Shvetadvipa. Now that Shvetadvipa is different from the Shvetadvipa of the material world. That Shvetadvipa is the place of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in the eternal spiritual world, the ones that he's eternally engaging in. So he's eternally engaging in Harinama Sankirtana in Shvetadvipa, there, in that version of Goloka, eternally, even before he comes into the material world, etc. So Lord Chaitanya's appearance is not just Krishna appearing as Lord Chaitanya in the early 1500s, late 1400s, and the spreading love of Godhead only at those times. No, Krishna as Lord Chaitanya is eternally there in Shvetadvipa, in, yes, Brahma Chaitanya Sampradaya, yes, correct. So, yes, Lord Chaitanya is eternally there in Goloka Vrindavana, in a version of Goloka Vrindavana where he is the center. So Nityananda and him are the center of focus and attention and love of devotees. So we have, each one of us has eternal forms in both Radha Krishna Leela in the eternal full-scale Goloka and eternal forms in like Lord Chaitanya's Leelas. So many devotees might have the misunderstanding that Chaitanya Leelas are just manifested only at certain times in the material world, and that, okay, Lord Krishna appears as Chaitanya to preach a certain message, etc., to bring us to Goloka. No. Lord Chaitanya is actually there eternally in his eternal version of Goloka, simultaneously as the Goloka pastimes are happening between Radha and Krishna. Very important to remember. So Lord Chaitanya's internal meditations, he's meditating on what's going on in Goloka Vrindavana. So Krishna is meditating on his interactions with Sri Radha. Srimati Radharani is meditating on her interactions with Krishna and giving love to us in love and affection as Lord Chaitanya. That is what's going on eternally in the consciousness of Lord Chaitanya. And of course, Radha and Krishna, they're individually experiencing their face-to-face forms with each other. So if you have to explain to somebody, if they can't fathom, okay, if they can't fathom that Radha and Krishna, their two individual forms, are the supreme absolute truth, then explain to them very clearly, if they can only understand mentally, or if they can only grasp a single form, period, no second forms, then say the form of Lord Chaitanya is absolutely the highest truth. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is correct. So if you're explaining like Christians or something, or people who have this fixated idea that monotheism means only one single form and not another. So basically, most monotheists, or those who claim to be monotheists, can't understand how Radha and Krishna together can be the one single supreme person and have infinitely unique individuality. They see that as duotheism. That's their error. That's because they're using the intellect to try and understand this. But their intellects can more easily grasp the single form of Lord Chaitanya. So Radha and Krishna together as Lord Chaitanya, not separated in individual forms, as the Supreme Absolute Person. Male form, the mood of Sri Radha. Okay? So it makes it easier to explain to people like this, because I run into this a lot, where it's very challenging to explain to people who don't understand and who aren't tapped into Radha and Krishna and all this stuff. They can't wrap their heads around how the supreme single individual can be Radha and Krishna. They see it, okay, it has to either be Krishna or it has to either be Sri Radha, one or the other, then the next one has to come secondarily to that. They cannot see how Radha and Krishna are co-equal, at least. Radharani is actually superior on the deeper level, but the fact is the devotee has to understand how they're co-equal in terms of tattva, potency, purity, value, etc., significance. But you said it would be simultaneously more accurate yet materially broad to just call it Sanatana Dharma. I don't know. These are all just labels. I'm just a small Christian devotee. Well, here's the thing. When we get to the point about, because we're talking about personality here. We're talking about form, okay? So I shouldn't even use the word it. I don't even like using the word it. Everything is he and she. Everything is he and she, or both, he and she combined. There's no it, actually, in all of existence or eternity. Everything is he, she, and he, she combined. One or the other, a combination of both. everything. I should say everyone. So everything and it. Both of these terms I shouldn't even use anymore because they're not accurate. They actually, those terms alone actually are technically impersonalistically tinged by themselves. But when devotees use them, it's always in a certain context so people can understand things. It's not that we're saying that it's actually exist or that things are actually there aside from persons. No. It's just to explain to limited brains the concepts that are extremely deep so they don't get confused. You know what I'm saying? So, but the point is, everything we do in Krishna consciousness is about the form of Lord Chaitanya, the form of Radha and Krishna. Okay? The forms of Radha and Krishna. The form of Lord Chaitanya, the forms of Radha and Krishna. Their forms specifically. More so, over and above everything else, above the sound vibrations, above the everything else. Their forms are the most important. Form, period. And if anyone claims any differently or tries to sideline that their form is actually the highest essence, the deepest truth, the central focus of everything, they are a bogus preacher and they're misleading you. Because if their forms do not maintain the center of focus in the process of everything, then you can know for a certainty, 100%, if even the sound vibrations become more priority over their forms being meditated on, you'll know 100% that you've been tinged with syncretic Brahmavadi or some impersonally tinged ideology has crept into your thinking. If their form becomes less significant than some other aspect of devotion to you in your meditations, chanting, etc. Very important to remember this point. We are he, she, men, women, it's. Right? So I find it's easier for people to understand the single form of Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is correct preaching and it is accurate to teach people that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, factually and literally, 100%. So even if you're saying to people and preaching to them that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead in the eternal Shvetadvipa, the transcendental abode, that is correct. That's not incorrect preaching at all. Just like saying Krishna is the absolute supreme highest, the person of the transcendental abode, that is also correct. But it's like, and that is usually the way the acharyas explain this, because so many devotees get wrong assumptions. Because for the Dvarkavasis and for the Mathuravasis, they have to see Krishna as the central focus center, right? And then they have to see Sri Radha as basically to his side, or coming from him, his potency, etc. They have to see Radharani like that in order to actually have a clear-cut understanding of their devotion, etc. The Vrindavan inhabitants can understand the relationship between Radha and Krishna. They don't see Radharani as secondary to Krishna at all, ever. They actually either see it the other way around, where Radharani is actually Krishna's source, etc., and they can understand how this is the case. Or, at the very least, they see Radha and Krishna as co-equal. Bare minimum, they see it that way, if they're an inhabitant of Vrindavana. But if they're a Dvarkavasi, so this is why Prabhupada and the Acharyas explain Krishna's position like this, and then Radharani basically in a way that's, okay, Krishna is the potent, Srimati Radharani is the potency. That is correct. Yes. That is correct in terms of preaching to all levels of devotees. That is correct. Yes, it is. And therefore, in scriptures and books, Bhagavatam, etc., it's essential that we preach this way so people don't get confused, so that this will facilitate all their rasa inclinations, etc. But for the inhabitants that do actually appreciate Sri Radha and understand her actual position in Vrindavana, the understanding of Radharani's superiority to Krishna is a no-brainer. It's not something that confuses people or misleads them, and it's completely understood by the inhabitants of Vrindavana. But the inhabitants of other realms, Vaikuntha, Dvaraka, Mathura, etc., they don't understand how Srimati Radharani is superior to Krishna. They don't. They can't get it. They can't grasp it. And out of mercy and affection for them, we preach in a way that everyone can understand. Yes, Krishna is the supreme. He's at the head. He's the potent. Srimati Radharani is his potency, etc. Because that's also correct. But what people don't understand in those other rasas or understandings, they don't understand that Sri Radha as the potency of Krishna is actually also her secondary function. That's not her central function either. She actually has a superior function even to that function. Why do you think the number 0 is before the number 1 in the number line? That's not a coincidence. So all these things are very easily understood by those who have very deep insight and who are inhabitants of Vrindavana eternally. The appreciation of Sri Radha is there, inherent in you and intuitively in you, to where her superiority to Krishna is understood by you. If you're an inhabitant of Dvaraka or Mathura, you will need to see Krishna as the potent and Srimati Radha as the potency. You'll be required to see it this way in order to to understand your devotional service or what you're doing or feeling comfortable in it, because that's the realm you're an eternal preferred inhabitant of. That's why. And that's how the inhabitants there think about Krishna. So the inhabitants of Vrindavan understand this consciousness of the Dvarkavasis, Mathuravasis regarding Krishna also, but they understand that Krishna is beyond the God function, though, whereas no one else aside from the inhabitants of Vrindavan understand this. So you're dealing with an entirely different series of meditations, of understandings of things that are extremely intuitive, beyond scriptural references, information amongst the inhabitants of Vrindavana, so deeply intuitive and affectionate based that they can understand everything that the inhabitants of other realms cannot understand about Krishna. They can understand everything about Krishna beyond him being God, beyond the God function even. And we're talking about all the face-to-face details about him. So, and this is why I keep going on and on and on about form, over and over and over again. Because others listening in from the outside, they will mistake when there's something beyond the God function. They'll assume if we don't keep emphasizing form over and over again, they'll just automatically assume if they don't keep listening that we're talking about some impersonalistic ideology. And everyone knows who has actually taken part in these discussions, everyone knows we're 100%, infinitely percent against any impersonal anything, actually, if people actually keep listening to what we're talking about. But the issue is, so many like to jump to conclusions and assume, so if they hear you saying, oh, there's something beyond Krishna being God, so something about Krishna beyond him being God, they'll assume that you're talking about something impersonal if you don't clarify Krishna formfully, face-to-face, is more infinite and more affectionate than him as God, period. And if you don't clarify this point, then they'll just assume you're talking impersonalism. So, the thing is, these assumption blocks are also designed in other people's minds. So they will basically, their assumptions will be the shields around Goloka, which will bounce them back away from it, which will not incline them to listen further or to talk further or to interact with you further. And that's actually a healthy thing in many ways, because their assumptions will be the very thing that keep them from unnecessarily interfering or wasting people's time who are interested in Vrindavana, who are interested in the mood of the Vrajavasis, etc. So in many ways, it's actually a good thing. If people assume stuff about us, that's fine, because it keeps time from being wasted on both ends. Basically, they won't come to talk to us or interact with us, and we won't waste time interacting with them either. So, it works out for everybody. They'll be left with their assumptions, thinking we're saying something we're not, and we'll be actually teaching what we're really teaching and talking about, with them not listening to it. So be it. That's Krishna's arrangement. And the thing is, all these principles, you'll notice everything about Srimati Radharani and the gopis and everything, even though this can be explained, yes, and in a way that's able to be put down on paper, you still have to understand all these things about her and her relationship with her mood and affection on an intuitive level. You have to understand it intuitively beyond what Scripture says on paper. You have to. Otherwise, you will never understand Srimati Radharani or appreciate her or anything. Because the thing is, her realm is beyond understanding altogether. But once you appreciate this realm beyond understanding, the realm of infinite bliss, Hladini, her potency, then you enter into this realm of understanding of things, or grasp of things. Grasp of things beyond understanding. That's actually the case, where you can grasp concepts and ideas and things that are happening on such a deep level that it's beyond the ability for scriptures to verify altogether. Beyond the ability of scriptures to verify. It can't be verified. Or I should say, they, in their most intimate interactions, can't be verified on paper. And that's why Radharani's name is hidden in the Bhagavatam, for that reason. Because her entire realm, everything she does and engages in, is beyond the realm of understanding, beyond the realm of intellectual capacity, completely. So if someone tries to put the glories of Sri Radha and her associates on paper and tries to explain them in some way, in some shastrically, logically way or whatever, it will never work. Because that process in and of itself is already underneath the God conception ideology, where the focus is on Krishna as God, as the main central focus, versus Krishna more intimately than being God, and if he's God or not needing to matter one way or the other. Okay? So Krishna being God only matters to the individuals who have a spiritually conditioned requirement that he is God for them to worship him. So the inhabitants of Vrindavana don't have that requirement. They'd worship Krishna no matter what. So even if Krishna passed off the God hat to somebody else and remained just Krishna, and he decided to do that at some point, he has the free will to do that at any point he wants to, the inhabitants of Vrindavana would still worship him and would still understand that he's supreme above God, whoever he passed the hat of God off to. And this is basically exactly what's going on in the dynamic between Krishna himself, the inhabitants of Vrindavana, and the inhabitants of Vaikuntha. He's passing off his hat, and he's appearing in the same exact form to the inhabitants of Dvaraka, his two-armed form, and I'm continuing to go on, my friends, because I'm noticing people are still interested and participating. So I'm having fun with this. I'm excited, actually. So and welcome back to Gabriel. Thanks for joining us as well. So that tells me that Radha and Krishna, they're really excited to take part in these discussions and interaction between us, and Lord Chaitanya is too, because I'm feeling really enlivened, actually. This is amazing. So the thing is, yes, they all speak through each of us, every one of us. Okay, every one of the devotees. So pay attention to what other devotees are saying. Every other devotee you interact with, even if you disagree with them on different levels, just pay attention, pay close attention. You can see their internal moods towards Krishna, towards Radha and Krishna, towards all this stuff. You can see this, and you'll. So it's very interesting too, because the realm of Vraja, the realm of Vrindavana, you'll notice this. You'll run into this all the time. It's that when you're focused on being tapped into the realm of Vrindavana. Hare Krishna Bhakti. Thank you for the encouragement, my friend. I really appreciate it. It's always a relief and a soothing calm to my mind seeing the encouragement of other devotees. Because so basically, yeah, Bhakti Gabriel, we've covered a lot of interesting stuff up to this point. Really exciting stuff, actually. So what I'm clarifying now is basically the why we're supposed to develop the consciousness right now in this bodily lifetime of the inhabitants of Vraja and Vrindavana, which means we need to cultivate the consciousness that we would still love Radha and Krishna to the same degree of depth, and that would continue even if they passed off the goddess and God hat to somebody else. That we would still love them and they would still be the supreme center of our focus, in spite of not being the supreme goddess or God. Because that condition itself that we impose on Radha and Krishna is the very condition that keeps us out of Vrindavana. Period. That is the condition that imposed on Radha and Krishna in your heart and mind that keeps the individual out of being able to be in Vrindavana. Because that is the first form and the first aspect of transcendental spiritual conditioning before material conditioning. Okay? Exactly. Nothing would change. But very important to remember, if someone has the consciousness where Krishna needs to be God for them to continue worshiping him, that consciousness is the consciousness of Vaikuntha, Mathura, and Dvaraka. Please always remember this. So if you want to attain Vrindavana, I want to attain Vrindavana, and I'm sure all of you do too, and that is what the previous acharyas want us to attain Vrindavana specifically, and that is why they give us Harinama Sankirtana, and that is why Lord Chaitanya specifically appears, is to bring us to Vrindavana, whereas, see, in previous Kali Yugas, in previous ages, devotees, Krishna appeared and spread the holy names, but it wasn't the same as Lord Chaitanya appearing the way he does to spread love of Krishna. So it wasn't the same as Lord Chaitanya coming in the mood of Srimati Radharani, spreading the mood of the gopis, Paraki Rasa, the mood of the inhabitants of Vrindavana also to the world. No, it was different. So in this case, this is an extremely rare opportunity. The opportunity to be able to go to Vrindavana is also a rare opportunity, to be reignited in that relationship. Many, many ages past, devotees could make it to Dvaraka or Mathura, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So that's referring to Vasudeva Krishna in Dvaraka. That's what that's referring to. And of course his Vishnu expansions. But Radha and Krishna coming to bring us back to Goloka Vrindavana, this is such an intense and rare gift of mercy, informing us of this fact about our relationship with them that is not something to be taken cheaply. So Prabhupada in Bhaktisiddhanta did not come to give us Mathura Prema or Dvaraka Prema. No. That you can have that if that's what you want. But the point is they came to give us Vraja Prema. Now that is what they came to give us, and that is why they were sent, actually, by Radha and Krishna, and why they chose to appear, and take on all these difficulties and its bodily harm and etc. All these things they took on out of affection for us, to give us this Vraja Prema, and this, to reignite our relationship with Radha and Krishna. So, yes, correct. You will only go once. That's right. So here's the thing. It's very important. Now, if one makes it to Vaikuntha or Mathura or Dvaraka, because they're places of spiritual conditioning, of transcendental conditioning, just like there's material conditioning, there is transcendental conditioning. So if you go there, be careful what you wish for. If you really cultivate the mindset of Mathura or Dvaraka, which is the consciousness that Krishna needs to be God, and that's the biggest, most important factor in your devotion, even if you have intimacy with him, if that's your main focus, or if that's the most important thing to you, you will be conditioned in that thinking for a very long time. We're talking billions, trillions, quadrillions of years even, because you'll be so happy and satisfied, but you won't actually be aware or allowed to be aware of what you're missing in Vrindavana if you're in Dvaraka or Mathura. You won't actually register what you could be experiencing in those places because they're places of transcendental conditioning. So it's very important, just like we may need to be careful not to allow ourselves to be materially conditioned, we need to be equally careful not to allow ourselves to become spiritually or transcendentally conditioned to dwell in other realms, in other relationships with Krishna, aside from our eternal, main, central Goloka Vrindavana relationship. Because you'll end up in those places and you'll be there for huge amounts of time. Like, we're talking huge amounts of time. And you may actually need to come back to the material world to redevelop the ability to have it register that there's a realm beyond those ones, which is Vrindavana, that's actually more relishable and more intimate. That may actually be what happens and occurs and needs to occur for you to get back to Vrindavana. So do not waste this opportunity of getting back to Vrindavana immediately and directly. Don't waste it and don't risk it. Not even for these other Vaikuntha places or Dvaraka or Mathura. Don't risk it. Because if you do that, yeah, you'll be with Krishna, sure, but you'll be experiencing a transcendentally conditioned version of your relationship with Krishna. This is a thing people don't understand. They really don't get this. The real fact of it is Krishna allows those places to exist eternally, just like he allows the material world to exist eternally, to facilitate all the desires of the living entities. He can easily display himself as Nrsimhadeva, as Vishnu, as all these other forms, also in Goloka as well. In the midst of you engaging in your pastimes with him as Krishna, he doesn't need these other realms to exist as separate places. He doesn't need a separate Dvaraka or Mathura. Those places are there for living entities who insist on being transcendentally conditioned in those relationships with him, and wanting those things with him. That's why those places are there. But what he actually wants all living entities to do is be with him in Vrindavana. That's what Krishna himself actually wants. There's no requirement for the other realms. They're there because he wants to facilitate the desires of the living entities in their various desires to serve him, right? But all of those pastimes and stuff, the Dvaraka pastimes, those can all easily happen within Goloka Vrindavana itself. There isn't a necessity for another realm. The reason there's a separation between the realms is because the devotees in those realms have a different consciousness from the ones in Vrindavana. So they're not compatible with their consciousness. The way they think isn't compatible with the way that the inhabitants of Vraja think. So therefore they have to have a different realm eternally from the inhabitants of Vrindavana, so that they can actually, because if they were to enter Vrindavana with that mindset that they have, they would constantly be disturbed in mind. They would be like, oh, they're not recognizing Krishna as God, they're not giving him their proper respect, they're not this, they're not that. And they even if they were in Vrindavana, they would just always be disturbed all the time. Like, Krishna should be getting worshipped more properly and this and that. It's just, they're really willy-nilly about Krishna. That would be the consciousness. They would just always be rolling around in their mind. They're not giving Krishna the proper respect. That would constantly be what's in the mind of a Dvaraka Vasi. So it's basically just be like, they wouldn't even feel comfortable there if they were there, because that's not, their consciousness. So it's a very important point to remember, because this whole idea that Krishna has to be God, Krishna being God is the main central thing. That mindset won't get you to Vrindavana. That'll get you to other spiritual realms close to Vrindavana, but it won't get you there though. So, but a lot of devotees seem to be having this idea that it will, that like maintaining the focus that Krishna is God as the central necessity main thing is what gets you to Vrindavana. No, that isn't how it works. Not how it works. In fact, thinking like that about Vrindavana is what gets you not to Vrindavana, but to elsewhere. So it's like, It's funny, actually. It's funny, but it's a very deep, serious topic also. And that's with all these topics. They're fun and funny, but also very deeply serious. So put it this way. It's like if you... So here's the thing, and we talked about this before. This is very important to remember. Yoga Maya means affection. So Maya has two definitions. For the actual deeper factual definition means deeper affection with Krishna. That's what it actually means. But those who think that Krishna needs to be God as the main thing, those who think like that, they think that the word Yoga Maya means that the inhabitants of Vrindavana are in illusion regarding whether Krishna is God or not. Because they're thinking that Krishna's God function is the main thing. So they're thinking that, Krishna's God function is the main thing, but they have so much affection for him, they're not knowing he's God, and that's why they don't know he's God. No. It's because they understand more about Krishna than the individuals who understand his position as God. That's what Yogamaya actually means. It doesn't mean that they don't, it means that it doesn't matter because they understand Krishna's deeper role, which is more vast and more expansive than him being God even. That's the truth of Yogamaya. That's actually what that term means regarding the inhabitants of Vrindavana. But all the other devotees of other realms process it differently. They think it means that, okay, we're here, we're recognizing Krishna is God in Dvaraka, and so we're worshiping him as God, but we actually have more information and more knowledge about Krishna's position than the inhabitants of Vrindavana do. Okay, they might love him more than we do spontaneously, but we still have more knowledge of him over here, even though they love him more. See, that's how the Dvarkavasis think. They think they have more information about Krishna, and that basically the Vrindavana inhabitants have less information about Krishna, and that's why they're not worried about him being God. They completely don't understand what's really going on. They have no idea the depth of vision of Srimati Radharani, the gopis, or the inhabitants of Vrindavana in this regard. No idea whatsoever. Because they're conditioned with that whole God idea. That's literally what their conditioning is. So they cannot think any otherwise. There's all their thoughts keep leading back to that. Krishna at the highest function, the highest level, the deepest thing is him as God. That's always what it leads back to. But you know better, my friends. You know better than this. You know more intimate truth about Radha and Krishna, about Lord Chaitanya, than that type of thinking. So don't insult your own intelligence. Don't insult your own original consciousness, I should say, which is beyond the intelligence even. Don't insult yourself. Appreciate Radha and Krishna for their full-scale beauty. Appreciate Lord Chaitanya, and chant the holy names every single day. And this will get you to Vrindavana. Other processes don't do this. So I don't know about you, my friends, but I refuse to end up in these other places aside from Vrindavana. It's no, because once you see the value of Vrindavana, of Raja, over these other places, you don't take Vrindavana cheaply. You understand that no. This is not just some cheaply, easily available little thing. Okay, Lord Chaitanya comes to spread the holy names, and just because he does this, everybody can just immediately go to Vrindavana. It's no, you really actually have to want to be there and actually cultivate this consciousness for that to happen. Because if you really don't want that, then you're gonna end up somewhere else, man. It's what do you really want? What do we really want? Do we want illicit sex pleasure? Is that our main focus? And if that is your actual main focus, the first step in bhakti is to actually be honest about it. Okay, do you actually want unlimited illicit sex pleasure and pure devotion to Krishna both? If that's what you really want, then go for both. Be honest with your desire, though. Don't pussyfoot around and act like your desire is something it's not. Okay? If you really want to be in Dvaraka, actually go in that direction. If you really want to serve Krishna in Vrindavana, then go in that direction. That's the thing. But it's and if your focus is completely on gratifying your senses directly, using Radha and Krishna for that, then focus in that direction too. But you have to be honest about your desire. That's step one. So this eliminates the majority of Kali's influence over the individual. You first have to be honest about what your desire is, and therefore you can actually begin focusing on what your desire actually is. But as long as you're dishonest with yourself about what you really want, if you're in denial about what you really want, then you won't get the result, or you won't get the full result that you want. No. So the idea with all this is that, or the thing to take with us every single day of our devotional life is to take with us the fact that Radha and Krishna really causelessly love us and are extremely loving and affectionate towards us on levels we couldn't even fathom. And that affection is the basis and the source of all of our desires being able to be fulfilled to intensely unlimited degrees. Okay? Beyond unlimited, I mean. And the thing is, the only thing stopping us unnecessarily from having all our desires fulfilled is absorbing an abusive consciousness towards other living beings and towards Radha and Krishna, using them for our own sensual pleasures and using them to gratify our own desires. Okay? Using them is abusing them. So loving them and giving back to them is prema, is pure affection. So we may be enthusiastic devotees, but how are we enthusiastic? Are we enthusiastic because Radha and Krishna are just so infinitely hot and attractive and sexy in the form that therefore we basically want to have eternal sex with them, and that's why we're wanting to get back to Goloka? Yeah, that's been my consciousness, has been my entire devotional life, and still is my consciousness, and has always remained my consciousness. So if that's actually what your consciousness is, that's going to keep you in a material body and an externalized experience of your devotional service, because you're wanting to exploit Radha and Krishna for your sensual pleasure instead of giving back to them the affection they're giving you. If your consciousness is on actually giving Radha and Krishna affection and giving back to them, you're going to have no problem practicing celibacy, brahmacharya, etc. for their pleasure. But you're going to have an issue with it if you're like me and you want to use Radha and Krishna for your sexual pleasure. So, okay, that's why we have the issues. Because Radha and Krishna are infinitely hot and attractive and sexy, yes, beyond any material form. That is a fact. So, therefore, it's very easy to become lustfully fixated on them for our own gratification. It's not difficult to become obsessed with them in this way. And that type of obsession is what leads to you taking a material body in the externalized world. That's what led to me taking a material body, is this type of meditation on Radha and Krishna. That's why I'm here in the first place. But, ironically enough, because that attraction is actually an attraction, even though it's a misguided attraction, directed towards my own gratification attraction, nonetheless the attraction is still there. So the point is, you have to fix your mind on Radha and Krishna no matter what it takes. However you have to do so, you must do so. Okay? Whatever that takes, that is the first step. Even if it is lustful, or even if it is mixed with your own sensual desires, etc., you must fix your mind on their forms specifically. Okay? The beauty of their forms. And then what will happen is you keep doing this, that will shift to wanting to satisfy them. But this shift to wanting to satisfy Radha and Krishna, all living entities, will only happen when you give the love of Radha and Krishna to others. That is what will shift your consciousness out of wanting to lustfully enjoy Radha and Krishna personally for your own pleasure, like I always have desired. And what keeps me stuck in matter, and what keeps me struggling in my devotional service. It's not, the thing with me is basically it's not such a difficult thing in terms of the attraction being there or not. The attraction's there just fine, but the thing is, I have to shift my consciousness from wanting to enjoy sexual pleasure from them to wanting to give them infinitely, that in the form of uniting other living beings with them intimately, not considering my own gratification in the process. I have to achieve this, and this is the only way I'll make it back to Goloka. You may all be experiencing similar things to me in this regards. So I'm possibly speaking for many people right now who are in a similar situation. All of us right now are to various degrees using Radha and Krishna's beauty, their sensual affection, and all these wonderful things about them for our own gratification. So we're experiencing a pervert's world of Goloka Vrindavana. Yes, we're all perverts. The whole material world, everyone is a pervert in this material world. They're all pervertedly thinking about their relationship with Radha and Krishna, and all pervertedly thinking about how to use them for their own sensual pleasure. That is what the material world is. Okay? So let's all shift our perverted consciousness from perverted consciousness towards loving intimate consciousness by giving love and affection to others through the daily process of Harinama Sankirtana. Let's do this together, because together is what San means. San, together, Kirtana. Broadcasting together as a team. We're a team, my friends. We're not an island. So let's never treat ourselves as devotional islands, isolated in this ocean of eternity. No. We are all united eternally together, and together is what Radha and Krishna want to see. They want to see us united together as a team, serving all other living entities. By serving Radha and Krishna, we serve all other living entities. And they want to see this from us to not just see it not as a proof, because they know they have infinite affection for us already, but that moves their hearts in ways that even they don't understand themselves. So it moves their hearts in ways of affection towards us that make them inclined to reciprocate with us in ways that are even more intimate than what we're already experiencing with them right now. More intimate. So, I mean, with the material mind can only fathom up to a certain point of intimacy, okay? The material brain can only process things up to a certain level of intimacy and affection, etc. But the affection coming from Radha and Krishna, when you give love and affection of them to others causelessly, is what comes back to you from this. Is is rewards, sensual, intimate, loving rewards that are indescribable on paper and in words completely, altogether and entirely, and will never be mentioned in any Shastra ever for the rest of eternity in history, because that's how intimate they are. Okay, so make no mistake about this. None of this is an exaggeration. These are facts, and that is why the pure devotees have come here to reveal this to us. They've come this because they want us to be uplifted and enthused. Now, you have to understand this about Radha and Krishna's love and affection for you. You have to understand the degree of affection they're giving you in Goloka right now, real time, eternally. So when you understand this degree of affection, that is, and only then is when the gratefulness begins to kick in. So whatever sexual issues you may have now, whatever addiction to masturbation or sex with others you have now, will gradually start to diminish and will be less and less attractive as time goes on. Now, see, in my issue, it's basically been, I'm actually sexually attracted to Radha and Krishna, so therefore I'm not really attracted to material externalized forms so much. It's just that because I have a lustful, perverted consciousness towards Radha and Krishna that manifests in me basically being forced to enact those perverse ideologies in an externalized world that isn't actually me being in Goloka in my consciousness, right? So, but it's not that I'm like more attracted to external forms. No, I really am not interested. Basically, I just have used them as like, okay, Radha, I wish I was with Radha and Krishna right now, but this form is what's in front of me, this flesh and body. This sucks, darn, but at least it's something instead of nothing. You know, basically, it's at least it's some minuscule, infinitely minuscule semblance of my intimacy with Radha and Krishna. Basically, that's how my consciousness has been operating my whole devotional life. But it's never been a thing of like, okay, my devotional service here and then my lust is over here. It's been like, no, I lustfully desire Radha and Krishna, but it's like, okay, how can I convert this lust to pure love? How can I actually break out of my desire to use both of you in your beauty for my pleasure and actually want to serve you out of gratefulness for your love and affection? How do I do this? How do I pull this off? See? So it's never been a question for me of losing enthusiasm in devotion or not being attracted to Radha and Krishna or anything like that. It's just been, okay, how do I convert my lustful consciousness towards both of you to purely loving consciousness? How do I do it? How do I pull it off? You see? Because the desires for affection are there. The enthusiasm to be intimate with them is there. It's just a matter of desiring those things for their sensual pleasure eternally instead of mine. That's all. So, you know, whereas many individuals may be having an issue that's different from that or similar to that, but the point is, you know, whatever your initial source of attraction to Radha and Krishna is, whatever your source of enthusiasm is, for me it's lustful attraction, for you it may be something slightly different. Whatever that is, always have that as your fallback to go back and to re-inspire yourself and enthuse yourself again, you see, in devotional service. And understand, too, that Radha and Krishna are able to reciprocate as well on various levels. Imaginatory levels, dream levels, somewhat partially illusory levels, using their illusory energy to facilitate it as well. So it's not that it's 100% materially conditioned and then immediately pure. There's a huge middle ground between the two, where it's a gradual process of purification back to the purity. And Radha and Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, they will all reciprocate in various ways on that process. Balarama reciprocates, Nityananda, you know, visions, dreams, etc. And bringing you back to Goloka like this is they're making efforts on their ends too. So they're going to be doing things to help bring you back as well on their ends, like so many things. So it's not that if you have a dream or a vision or a thing, don't just automatically assume it's only your imagination completely. Understand that, yes, it's your imagination mixed in, but they're trying to reciprocate with you as well. It's not 100% only on your end. Their desire to reciprocate is real and it's happening. real time, okay, in the midst of these things. So just like Radha and Krishna, just like a mother in the material world, in the temporal externalized state, likes to see her son playing with toys and having those toys mimic their parents and imagine them, similarly, Radha and Krishna in the transcendental state, they like to see us using our imaginations to try and remember them and to see them in various capacities, you see? Now, they understand that we're not going to be stuck in the imaginatory level permanently, but see, it's like loving parents, because think about how much more loving and how much more merciful and how much more deep transcendental parental affection they have towards all living entities. So when they see you trying to use your imagination to remember them, to think about them, to draw artwork about them, etc., they'll see that and they will appreciate these things. You see, because you're trying to reach out to them, and that's what they're seeing. They're not looking at it from the perspective of, okay, he's an illusion, he's imagining things. They're looking from the perspective, okay, he's trying to reach out to us, we're trying to reach out to him too. So there's their hands are both reaching out. Radha and Krishna are reaching from their end, you're reaching from your end. Okay? Now, the imaginatory dream stuff that's happening before you become a fully pure devotee is that's what's going on here. They're reaching out to you, you're reaching out to them, and it's like this. The imaginatory dreams, they're like you're touching them slightly, just barely. It's going back to illusion again, touching them slightly, but you're reaching out is the point. So please remember this and let this uplift you on a daily basis. Don't be discouraged that, the experiences I'm having are just completely my illusion. No, they're actually trying to reciprocate too from their ends, okay? But always have this correct perspective of their reciprocation as well. Always understand that it's a process of you reaching out and them reaching out to you and trying to make that connection as much as possible. So Radha and Krishna, they're always thinking about the welfare of you on a personal level. So don't ever think or wrongly assume that Radha and Krishna are absorbed in their pastimes in Goloka and they're not specifically focused on you right now as they're immersed in those activities. Oh, they're very much focused on you while they're doing that. There's never a time when Radha and Krishna are just immersed in their own pleasures, not paying attention to the living entities individually, on an individual level. Never. They're always 100% of the time focused on you. Every day, 24/7, what they're doing. Because a lot of devotees, they may have the wrong understanding that Radha and Krishna, they're just, they're, in the gopis, they're engaged in the Rasa Leela, they're all this other stuff. Well, if that was the case, if that was their consciousness, we wouldn't have Harinama Sankirtana. We wouldn't have them coming as Lord Chaitanya. We wouldn't have any of this happening. We wouldn't have them reminding us of them through the representatives at all. If their consciousness was that, it would literally just be us left to our own devices, having to figure out how to get back to them, and then miraculously someday getting back to Goloka some way, somehow, by happenstance, basically. If that was their consciousness, we would just remain in the material world for forever, and there would never be any escape ever if Radha and Krishna never, thought about us. But it's not. That's right, not a blade of grass moves without Krishna's sanction. Now you understand the deeper meaning of that word too. That what that means is not a single thought you have happens without Krishna's sanction. Not a single thing that happens in your life happens without Krishna's sanction. So what does sanction mean? It means conscious reciprocatory thought and processing of what's taking place. So Krishna's pinpointedly his eyes on you, his unblinking eyes, lotus eyes, always thinking about your benefit, your well-being, your happiness, and every single thing that's taking place. Wishing the best for you constantly, right? So always remember too, what does Krishna say? He says this very clearly, and he's not exaggerating. He says, everyone follows my path in all respects. What does that mean? That means we follow his path in the respect of being in the eternal mood of giving love and affection to all others. And that is what Krishna's mood, that is Krishna in the mood of being the supreme enjoyer. That is his supreme enjoyment, is giving infinite love and affection to others. That is Krishna's mood of being the supreme enjoyer. It's not that Krishna has the consciousness, I want to gratify my tongue, my genitals, because I'm the Supreme Lord. And okay, you're going to gratify me like this, you're going to gratify me. No, Krishna is doing that because he knows that we're experiencing pleasure interacting with him in those ways. And that's why he does that. It's because he's already self-satisfied. So it's like he doesn't have any impetus, need, urge whatsoever to want to gratify his tongue, his stomach, or his genitals, because his tongue, stomach, genitals are already beyond infinitely gratified without even needing to separately gratify them in any way, shape, or form, right? So it's like those interactions and stuff it's always a reciprocatory, relationship-based interaction, always. It's always face-to-face in every case. face to face in every case. Always remember the saying, you will destroy every single impersonalist and impersonalist tinged idea that you will ever come across. Face to face in every case, period. That's reality, that's truth, that's the deepest understanding of everything. So there's only face to face in every case, everywhere, at all times, at all places. Face to face with Radha and Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and other living beings. Always personal, always super personal. So now that all these really awesome things are known to all devotees, so what's going to be happening is this Harinama Sankirtan is going to be taking off very quickly soon, with the proper understanding of what Harinama Sankirtan actually is. A big aspect of this is going to be the Raja Rishis appearing among us, actual pure devotees appearing among us, who have the potency to actually spread this movement. The initial talking about it is happening now, but this is really going to be the next phase of Lord Chaitanya's golden age. Make no mistake about it, mark my words. This will be the next phase of Lord Chaitanya's golden age, and the pure devotees he's sending and has sent now are gradually now growing up among us. There's a few of them in children's bodies, toddler bodies right now, and then there's more coming too. So it's going to be an alliance of pure devotees, not just one individual, and we're going to together be able to assist these pure devotees in bringing in the full flowering of Lord Chaitanya's golden age. So, without further ado, we've gone for 2 hours, and I appreciate everyone taking part in this. See, there's one viewer left, 2 viewers, okay. Not sure exactly which ones they are, but whoever they are, I thank you for staying the entire course and taking this time with me this evening to have these interesting discussions. Now, I pray that you will all be daily inspired in Harinama Sankirtana, knowing all these things, and I pray that you all focus on developing the Vrindavana mood of consciousness, very much so, and that you don't allow yourselves to be transcendentally conditioned into other realms. I pray this for all of you because I know how wonderful the realm of Vrindavan is compared to these other realms. At least I know that much. There's so much more to know, but this much I do know for a certainty. So, all glories to the previous acharyas, Ayin Prabhu, Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, actual Lord Chaitanya, Lord Brahma, and Lord Sri Krishna. And all glories to the assembled devotees. May you feel ever increasingly daily upliftment in your devotional lives. And as a side note, if you feel so inclined, feel free to watch the encoded music videos, which are a pretty cool topic, if you ask me. But that's optional. Completely not necessary if you're already engaged in 24-hour Harinama Sankirtana, because that's what the encoded messages are for anyway. But if you need that extra little boost or pickup or whatever, or the encouragement for Radha and Krishna, that they're really reciprocating and they really want you inspired in Harinama Sankirtana, check them out. See what you think. All right. Talk to you later. Hare Krishna.